Live Fit Podcast, episode 133. What is a health coach anyway?
Welcome to the Live Fit Podcast with Glenn Johnson, your resource for all things that contribute to good health. You will hear expert advice and interviews with leading authorities on fitness, food, fat loss, mindset, and the mind-body connection. You will find show notes, articles, and health programs at livefitpodcast.com.
Yes, it is time once again for the Live Fit Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Johnson, your guide to better health. Today's guest is me, as interviewed by my good friend, Dr. Glenn Livingston. Who else would I get to interview me? Glenn interviews Glenn. Well, I am back from my summer vacation / podcast hiatus and ready to start a new season. I'm working in my new office studio that I built with my own two hands based on my own design. I rode my bike around over the summer and I looked at houses and I thought about what I wanted in my studio and designed it in my head, made some sketches when I got to where I was going, and every night or weekend I'd be out here hammering nails, and eventually, boom, I had the whole structure built. I love it. It is not soundproof, but is very sound resistant. And it is really fun to be here in a structure that I built myself, and it looks beautiful. I strove for perfection and accepted acceptable. So that was kind of my motto. I knew I wasn't going to get perfect as I had no skill at the beginning, but by the time I was done, now I think I could build an actual house. I also wanted to share with you that the Live Fit podcast was selected as one of the 25 top healthy living podcasts. I am thrilled. What an honor. I work really hard to bring you the most interesting and valuable information to help you live your life healthy, fit, and free. And to be recognized for that really gives me goosebumps. So thank you. I'm totally thrilled. For a while now, I've been wanting to do this episode. Actually, years I've been wanting to come on and share with you what exactly a health coach is and what it isn't. I'll give you a hint. It's not the same as a life coach or an athletic coach, though there are some similarities. However, as I was putting together my talking points, I pictured standing here alone in my studio lecturing you about what I do, and I started thinking it would be a lot more interesting if somebody actually interviewed me. So I brought on my very good friend, Dr. Glenn Livingston, who you may have heard of before from episodes 103 and 109, and who you're going to hear from again in episode 134, the very next one, where he shares with us what it takes to become a Never Binge Again coach. Today's interview begins with Dr. Livingston giving a brief bio about me, and then he asks me to fill in any of the blanks. Without further ado, let's get on with the interview.
Glenn is a professor and a health coach at a corporation, and has studied exercise physiology for many years, is one of the fittest people that I know, and has the most interesting advice to give if you go for a hike with him. He just looks at your form and teaches you how to walk, and they're just things you would never think of that seem to prevent injury and ease the aches and pains of coming down the mountain. I'm sure all sorts of other things. So, Glenn, how are you today? What's going on?
Oh, I am loving life. It's a beautiful day in the Pacific Northwest, feeling great, alive, saving lives. Can't ask for anything more.
Right?
Yep.
So, can you give me a sketch of your biography for kind of fill in the gaps that I left out in what I described for people?
Yeah, really briefly, I was in the Navy. I was in the Forest Service. I've been to several schools. I started in a junior college. I got a bachelor's degree this was all in California, in journalism, actually. I worked in TV news. I worked in film and TV. I did sound editing for film and TV down in LA. Then I drifted into personal training because I found that to be much more rewarding, actually helping people feel better, live longer, rather than helping people maybe be entertained for a little while. So that was kind of how I drifted over into the physical side. And then I decided I wanted to help more people than just one at a time. So I went back to school, got a master's in kinesiology, or exercise science as it's also known, and started teaching at the college level, and have migrated from teaching to I continued to do personal training, but I also expanded to health coaching, and I don't really do personal training anymore because I found that my personal training was more health coaching than anything, and now I can achieve a better bang for my time by talking with people over the phone and over my podcast and helping them improve their own lives, because face it, a personal trainer is really only good for about 1 or 2 sessions, and then the person should know good form. After that, they're just a motivator. They help the person live a little bit better, help them create healthy behaviors, and that's what I can do as a health coach over the phone.
That makes all the sense in the world. And you do that professionally now. That's where your happiest is, when you're working as a coach, right?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's my day job. My night job is the Live Fit podcast and my website, Live Fit Lean. I talk with patients or clients, whatever you want to call them, over the phone and help them find what works for them.
Before I ask you for a few things that tend to work for clients, what I'd love to know, like we were talking about before, you were saying there is a particular demographic that you tend to do better with, and why, and I thought we might be able to make a couple of points about that. Could you say what that is?
I like to work with people that are 40 years old or above, and they don't have to be chronologically 40, but they do need to have that sort of mentality and maturity, because I've found that people younger than 40 tend to want that quick fix. They're looking for that magic bullet, that secret potion, that one diet that's going to work for them. And I have found that simply is not true, because what really matters is those little tiny things that you do every day, throughout the day, those habits, those behaviors. And once you can steer those towards better health, you're going to be healthy without it feeling like a diet or a restriction or some sort of thing that you have to do for a little while.
You know, it reminds me of something that Jim Rohn said about success. He was talking more about business success, but it's true. He said, successful people do the things every day that unsuccessful people choose not to do.
Yes.
And he said that these successful things are easy to do, but they're also easy not to do.
Very nice.
I would like to underscore the idea that we tend to do best with clients that are over 40, and especially people who have gotten like pre-diabetic or some type of a health incident, because then they're really motivated. And it seems like until that point, people are on this eternal quest for a wake-up skinny pill. And Glenn, I don't know about you, but I'm convinced there is no wake-up skinny pill, right?
Oh, God, no. I've been searching for it since I was 12 years old. Not for myself, but for other people. And I've had several people in my family that were in search of the skinny pill, and so I was sort of on their coattails trying to find it too. And here I am, 51, and I've been under the definite conclusion for the past 10 years, at least, that there isn't one.
There's no wake-up skinny pill. There's no wake-up skinny diet. What there are a set of behaviors and mindsets and things that you can do every day that get you where you need to go in a slow, steady way. And like Socrates said, if you're trying to walk to Mount Olympus, and just make sure that every step you take is in the direction of Mount Olympus, and then you'll reach Mount Olympus. So okay.
Nice.
Well, could you talk to me about some of the things you might have discovered are those simple things that you can do to create the success that most people don't want it. Remember you told me about a guy who he was eating fast food all the time and he didn't want to give anything up. Tell me about that.
This was a gentleman I called, and he was actually biting into a burger at the time. And he said, look, you can talk to me while I'm sitting here eating my burger, but I've tried everything. I really don't think there's anything that you could say to me that's going to help. Now, we talked for about a half hour or so, and by the end of the conversation, he decided the one little thing he wanted to do to progress in the right direction towards Mount Olympus, put one foot in front of the other, was to not eat seconds. I talked to him a week or two later, checked in on him. He had done great. He did not eat seconds, and now he was so motivated he was going to take another step forward and take literally a walk in the morning before he went to work. We kept talking. He kept doing things or continuing with what he was doing, and eventually, over the course of about 9 months, he lost 100 pounds.
Wow. Just from that one little step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's all it took.
Yeah.
He just took one step in the right direction, got on a path, and kept stepping in that same direction.
Okay, so one of them was never to go back for second. Are there a couple of other things that have worked with clients?
He started walking. He started walking in the morning before work. Then the next thing he did was walking in the evening after work. And this was great because he took his wife and his kids with him. So it was family time. And that was one of the things he didn't want to give up. He didn't want to go to the gym because he wanted to spend time with his family. He has several kids and wanted to spend time with them and a wife. So he got the idea that he could walk with them. Now, it's funny. I paused and hesitated saying he got the idea because he didn't quite have that idea at first, but with, our conversation, and I had this idea right from the beginning, but I didn't want to just give it to him. He had to come up with it by himself. And it's like you said, if you don't know, nobody does. And he did know. He just had to get his mind framed in the right way. And with some pointed conversation and some questions and reflecting on some of the things he said, it dawned on him, hey, I could take my wife and kids with me on my evening walk.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, because people don't realize the obstacles that they put in the wrong way.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. What else have you found is a helpful, simple habit for someone to adopt who's feeling overwhelmed and stressed at the idea of making changes?
Walking is really a great exercise. Now, there are certainly people that have difficulty walking, bad feet, knees, hips, etc. If you're not one of those people, what I generally steer people towards and recommend is taking a tiny little walk after each meal. So that could be 10 minutes after breakfast, 10 after lunch, 10 after dinner. And what that does is it mobilizes those calories. It stimulates the body using energy, so the energy that you just put in your bloodstream is now going to the muscles. It helps with digestion. It helps fight that loginess when you are after a meal. It gives energy. It really, that old saying, it takes money to make money. It's the same thing with energy. When a person has been sitting behind a desk all day, or maybe driving a bus, whatever they're doing, sitting and being sedentary, it's amazing when they get off work that they're so tired, all they can do is park it on the couch. And yet that's what they've been doing all day. So when you get up and you start moving your body, you actually have more energy, and then you can get some of those things done after work that you want to do.
That's so interesting. And even if it's just a 5 or 10 minute walk after a meal.
Yeah.
I've always thought that from an evolutionary perspective that this is controversial. I can't 100% prove it, but it makes a lot of sense to me. I think we have a death instinct. I believe that there is a part of our brain that is evaluating how useful are we for the spread of genetic material and the furtherance of our species. Mm-hmm. And if you keep signaling the brain that you have utility, that you're out there doing things and gathering food and seeking mates and making a constructive contribution to the world, I think that part of your brain wakes up and says, okay, there's more life in this guy, and let me give him more life to do that. And that if you give in to that instinct, if you give in to the instinct that says, well, at some point I have to let go of life and make room for the next generation to, pass on the genetic material because it's obviously going to be superior because it's evolved. I think if you give in to that, then your body signals you to say, okay, well, let's take one step closer to death. And so it makes, maybe that's just a really intellectual way of saying what you just said, but I've definitely had that experience where I go through a period when I'm traveling or something and I just can't move. I just have to sit on a plane for 10 hours or something, and I'm exhausted. But then I'll go hiking for 14 hours in a day, and for some reason I have an immense amount of energy when I get home at night. So I know what you mean.
The body likes to move. And to illustrate this, if you've ever had or known anybody who's had a hamster, a rat, or a mouse as a pet, that rodent has a little wheel that it uses to run on. Now, the question I ask is, how long did it take you to teach that pet hamster to run on the wheel? Everybody says, no time, it just did it on its own. And I say, why did it do that? And they, there's various ideas that people come up with, but mostly they just shrug their shoulders. And I say, because they like it. It feels good. Movement makes energy. Movement feels good. Movement keeps them strong and fit and alive and healthy. And even a little mouse knows that.
I feel like there's something wrong on a day that I don't get some exercise. I feel like
you're
sick.
Like
I'm just not. I feel like I'm sick. Yeah, I feel like I'm sick.
Yeah. There's another thing about movement that's really important for people to understand is that the lymphatic system, which is your drainage system for the excess fluids, and it also is the system, it's kind of like the sewer system that gathers up the germs, the bugs, the bad stuff that your body is fighting against. The bacteria and the viruses are gathered up into the lymphatic system in the lymph nodes, and eventually, after it's been cleaned and all the bad guys have been killed, it goes into your bloodstream and is cycled out through the liver and the kidneys. Well, that lymphatic system does not have a heart. It doesn't have a pump on its own like your blood system does.
Oh, I know where you're going. That's great. Finish. I'm sorry.
So without movement, that lymphatic system is not moving. It literally takes muscle movement for the fluid in the lymphatic system to be pumped. Now, there's a series of check valves in the lymphatic system. Your veins have them too, and that's why when you've been running, if you suddenly stop running and you just stand there, blood will pool in your legs. But if you move a little bit of marching, it doesn't even have to be wild marching, the skeletal muscle pump will pump that blood through the veins up into your heart. Same thing happens with the lymphatic system. Now, if you've ever seen one of those blood pressure cuffs that's pumped up manually with that little black ball, it's kind of pointy, almost like a lemon, shaped like a lemon. It has two check valves, meaning when you squeeze it, the air goes out one side. When you let go, the air comes in the other. So the air is constantly flowing in one direction, and that's exactly what's happening in the skeletal muscle pump in the veins and the lymphatic system. So, no movement, no pumping.
Wow, that's motivating.
Yeah, and it doesn't take a lot of movement. It's really amazing how little movement can offer health benefits. Walking is really one of the simplest things to do, and New Yorkers are some of the fittest people in this entire country because they walk so much.
Is that also why we sleep better on days that we exercise well?
Yes, because that movement is circulating out the toxins that get into our body from breathing and from eating.
And then those toxins do they cross the blood-brain barrier?
I cannot answer that. I do know that a lot of them will leave through our skin and through our exhalation. In fact, 50% of our toxins leave through our exhalation. The other 50% goes out through evaporation from our skin, urine, and feces.
Got it. Am I safer or more in danger from a zombie apocalypse if I walk 3 times a day for 5 minutes?
Oh, you're far safer if you walk 3 times a day for 5 minutes because you're getting yourself more fit. And that way when the zombies come, you're at least able to walk.
So what we've established is that it helps clean your blood to move a couple of times a day, clean the toxins so you sleep better, so that you have more energy, and so that you're much more able to escape the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah. And another thing about sleeping well, it's interesting that exercise gives you energy, but at the same time, you're burning up some of that potential energy that's locked in your muscles. So that's why you can sleep. And in fact, my evening routine is to do some light exercise. I do core exercises. So I'm working on my abs, my obliques, and my low back. I do plank, side plank, Superman, and that is what keeps me fit, keeps my back in shape because I have a chronic back problem. So I do that every single night. What that does, not only by keeping myself strong, my core strong, but it burns off any potential energy that I may still have. And then when I lay down, I kind of melt right into the mattress.
Gotcha.
When I forget, I lay there and I'm sort of vibrating a little bit, and I'm restless, and I toss and I turn and I can't sleep. So I will literally get out of bed and do a little bit of calm exercises. It's not enough to invigorate me. I'll probably do some stretches after that, stretch the back and the legs and whatnot. And then when I lay down, I zonk right out like a zombie.
Yeah, that was a good callback. I want my audience to pay attention because a lot of people have difficulty with binging in the middle of the night because they feel like they can't sleep and if they can't get back to sleep without binging.
Yeah.
And you just gave them an idea for doing that without binging.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to throw something else at you. I would like to give you a number of the most common irrational justifications for breaking your food plan and eating poorly. And I'm wondering how you would handle clients who said this.
Oh my gosh, I hear those every single day. One of my not favorites, one of my favorites is I'm not quite sure how to word this, but it always cracks me up. That's what I mean by my favorite, is when a person, it's usually a mother because they're usually the ones preparing meals for the kids, but they'll say something like, well, I was doing really great on my diet, but then I ate some cookies. And I'll say something like, why did you eat cookies? And they said, well, they were there and I was hungry while I was making dinner for my family or kids or self. It doesn't really matter who, but they have kids in the house. And so I said, well, why did you have cookies in the house? And they say, well, it's for my kids because they can handle them, but they're not for me. And I said, well, I think they are for you because you ate them. But the justification is that they're for the kids. And then my next question is, I say, well, if they're not good for you, are those cookies good for your kids? And they sort of think about that, and eventually they usually say, yeah, I guess not.
That's interesting. And then do they proceed to stop buying cookies, and how do they deal with the children when that happens?
Yeah, that's another tough nut to crack, because some adults really have this really strong contention that kids have to have sweet treats, that they would be deprived if they don't get cake or ice cream or cookies. And it's really amazing. And they keep going back to that thing that kids can handle it. And then I ask, how did you eat when you were a kid? And they tell me all these sweet things that they used to eat. And I say, so what about now? Are you still craving those kinds of foods? And maybe you crave those foods because they remind you of a simpler, happier time in your life. So by giving kids sugar, you're essentially training them to eat sugar. And when I interviewed Dr. Joel Fuhrman, he said he firmly believes that addictions are initially created by sugar in childhood.
Yeah.
Because that sugar lights up the same pleasure center of the brain that these other addictable chemicals like cocaine and alcohol, etc. do, and it gets
The pleasure centers, yeah.
Yeah, it gets started with sugar at 5 years old.
Yeah. An artificial concentration of pleasure that nature never intended.
I like that.
So that's really interesting. So you go right after the parental responsibility and the repeat of their own childhood. In Never Binge Again, I actually teach people how to resist the sugar in their house if they want to continue feeding their kids that. But I actually like what you're saying better in terms of changing societal norms and creating healthier kids. I really like what you're saying better.
It's the mindset of it all. Well, a lot of adults have this mindset that kids are so resilient and that they should experience this sort of thing as a kid, and then suddenly at a certain age, I don't know what, on their 18th birthday, boom, they stop eating sugar. I'm not quite sure how well thought out it is.
Well, and that's funny. But what tends to happen is that you're burning out the insulin-producing cells in the pancreas, right?
Yep.
Right, and so your kids have they're born with this utility to manage their sugar metabolism, and you're going to pass this stuff through their body that ultimately is going to shorten their life. I mean, maybe they're not going to burn out until they're 40 or 45, but you're ultimately shortening their life by, kind of setting fire to their pancreas.
Yep.
So that's a really interesting point.
Yep.
And neither Glenn nor I are medical doctors, by the way, so we're two guys with enough knowledge to be dangerous, but but I'm virtually certain that that's the case.
I do a lot of listening and a lot of reading. I've done 120 some podcasts, speaking with experts such as yourself and other doctors to learn as much about.
I love that you put me on a level with Dr. Furman. I love that.
You are.
I don't know if I deserve that, but thank you.
In my mind, from what I've seen, you are.
All right. So what about when people say, I could start tomorrow? There's no point to doing it today. I could start tomorrow.
There's a couple of ways of looking at that. And one of the most important things with starting a behavior change is having your mindset in the right place. And I have this little saying that I use. It's called, where your mind goes, your body follows. Where your mind goes, your body follows, because it really has no choice. If I have my mind on the chocolate cake, yet I'm trying to follow a diet to, resist things like that, it's really not going to work out. So if I can align the two and have my mind set on eating healthy foods and, maybe a few sweet treats here and there, and I'm not saying I never eat sugar. I simply do not obsess over it. I do not overeat sugar. I do not binge on sugar, but I do have some form of sugar probably every day. I, however, have the priority of treating my body with respect, of giving my body what it actually needs first. And then after that is met, then I will give it what my brain or my tongue wants within reason. So if they say they want to start tomorrow, I say, great. You meditate on it. You get your head in the right place. Really focus on your mindset. And then tomorrow, come out of the gate running.
Okay. What about when people say, I've tried so many times and failed. Why is this any different? I'm sure I'm never going to make it.
That really comes down to their mindset once again, and finding those little steps that they can take that won't be so devastating. The reason people fail in their diets is because it's a huge change. It's like if I was a couch potato and suddenly I'm asked to run a marathon, I might really feel super motivated. Yes, I'm going to do this. All right, I'm going to run and run and run, and 26 miles later, I'll be done and I can flop back out on the couch and get back with my life. If that's your attitude, it's simply not going to work because you're going to crash and burn. You're probably not going to run the 26 miles. You're going to quit. You're going to give it up. But if you have these little tiny steps like, I'm going to walk 5 minutes instead of jumping into running 26 miles. You have a little step, a baby step, if you will, and you can manage these behavior changes. One of the ways I illustrate it is I say, picture a 2-story house. You're on the bottom floor. How are you going to get up to the top floor? Are you going to wish? Are you going to hope? Are you going to pray? Maybe you're going to go to the gym and work your legs out really, really good, doing a lot of box jumps, and then you can jump up to the second floor. Is that going to work? No, it's not. Even the world record jumper is not going to be able to jump his feet from the ground floor 10 feet up. So what are you going to do? Take the stairs. You're going to take a step and then another step. You might take 2 steps at a time, but generally you're going to take 1 step and then another and then another. And that's how you get somewhere.
That's a really good analogy. See, I knew you were going to have some brilliant things to say.
Well, thank you.
What about when people say, I'm afraid I'm going to forget. I'm going to forget my plan and I'm just going to binge. I'm just going to go to town. What?
Reminders are great. Little Post-its on the fridge, on the bathroom mirror, on the car's dashboard, rear view mirror, things like that. Little reminders in the phone, a health coach calling you.
Yeah, I mean, there are a multitude of things we're not allowed to forget in life. Right?
Yeah.
You can't forget that you have to stop at a red light. You can't forget that you have to pee in the bathroom. You can't just drop shower and go wherever you want to.
Right.
But even more so, you can't forget to be at work at 9 o'clock. There are things that we can't forget, so we make reminders and make the effort to build that behavioral pattern because we've made a 100% commitment.
And that comes back to mindset. If you want it, you will make it happen.
Yeah. What about people that say, I can do this for a while, but then I'm going to be too weak?
That's probably from past experience. Do you mean weak physically or mentally?
Mentally. I'm not going to be able to withstand the craving.
Yeah, that's from past experience because they've tried to cut absolutely everything out of their lives that they enjoyed. And like with willpower is like a muscle. It fatigues. The more you use it, the more tired it gets. And that goes back to that 1 step at a time. If you take 1 step and you keep working on that 1 step until it's really ground in as a habit, then you don't have to think about it anymore. It's behind you. So there's no effort, no willpower needed. Then you can take your next step, put 100% of your extra focus into that next step, etc. And you keep doing that till you get there. So you're not going to weaken because you've made up your mind.
What about people who say, I'm too emotionally uncomfortable, I'm too upset, I really need to eat all this junk?
That is something I asked them to examine why they came to me in the first place, why they're talking to me, why they want to, I'm assuming, lose weight. If they have a stronger reason for not giving the stuff up than they have for giving it up, then they're going to keep eating all that junk. And maybe the time is not right for them.
So you go back to their why. You go back and try to enhance their motivations.
Yes.
Okay. Very interesting. What about people that say, I'm doomed to be fat because my parents were fat?
There is definitely a genetic trait. People, have blue eyes like their parents, and they're tall or short or whatever like their parents. And certainly there is a predisposition to somebody who is overweight genetically. Yet most of it comes from nurture. If both their parents are overweight, they probably eat in a certain way that made them overweight and kept them overweight. And the child sees that, and that's what they think is normal. Sometimes you simply have to be uncomfortable for a little while with new habits. One of the demonstrations I give to people is I'll ask them to cross their arms in front of them, like in front of their chest, like you're really mad. You've got your arms crossed. Try that.
Okay.
Okay. That feels comfortable and normal to you, right? Because you've probably done it 1,000 times.
Okay.
Now switch. Put the other arm on top.
Oh, wow.
To an outsider, that looks the same. If I was standing in front of you and watched you with your arms crossed, I almost wouldn't be able to tell which one was on top and which one wasn't. If you switched it, I still wouldn't be able to tell, and I certainly wouldn't think it looked awkward, but you feel it as awkward just because it's a little bit different than what's normal. And that's something that you need to get used to, feeling a little bit uncomfortable because it is something new. If you're a person who doesn't like change, this is going to be more difficult. But if you embrace that, you will get used to that and it won't be awkward.
Very good. I like that analogy. And you know how I resonate with that? Oh. When I learned how to juggle, I would always learn how to do things with my right hand. But to really integrate the trick, you have to do it with your left hand also.
Yeah.
And I'd have to force myself to transfer it over to the left hand, which is so much more uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
But I got it. But eventually I got it. What about someone who says they're great all day and then they pig out at night?
Oh, boy, that's probably 99% of the people I talk to. And there's a couple of thoughts I have on that. Generally, they're not eating enough throughout the day, and or they're not eating the nutrients that their body needs throughout the day. The second reason, or maybe third reason, would be that now they have the time. They're relaxed. They are at home. They have food available, where earlier in the day it was wake up, go, 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 go throughout work, blah, 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 all this stuff, stress, and you're thinking your mind's on other things. Now you get home, you relax. So, okay, we know this. I just described your life, but what do you do about it? Couple of things you can do about it. One is you eat better earlier in the day. You allow yourself enough calories to meet your energy demands. Lunch, midday, is supposed to be the biggest meal of the day. I say that it's supposed to be because Ayurveda says so. This is a 5,000-year-old healthcare system. It's the time when your body can handle digesting the most amount of food and the most complex food, and it gives you time afterwards to burn off that energy while you're awake and presumably moving around. If you eat big in the later part of the day, what are you going to do? Sit around and then lay around. Sleeping, that food is going to go into storage. So that's one way to prevent it. Another is having the mindset that you are treating yourself well. You can eat a big dinner of vegetables and low-calorie foods and feel satisfied with that. However, as you're making that shift, it's going to feel a little uncomfortable. So remember the arm crossing trick.
What about someone that says, I can never go out in public. I'm going to feel too deprived eating with everybody else in a restaurant. I'm going to feel like a social pariah. No one's going to want to eat with me.
Because you would be eating vegetables while everyone's eating brown deep fried foods?
Well, yeah, or you don't have cake after the meal, or you're not drinking, or any of the above.
Most of the time, people don't really notice, and these perceptions that people have, the what if or this is going to happen, is more of a reflection of themselves. They're thinking about it, but they're also being a little bit self-centered, thinking that the whole world revolves around them. Now, I walk out on the street and I'm wearing, let's say, I don't know, a bow tie, and that's really odd for me. I might think everyone's staring at me, looking at me, laughing at me, that I look silly and ridiculous, when in fact, nobody really cares about me. Now, you go out with friends, and certainly they're your friends and they care about you, and if you pass up that deep-fried basket of stuff and instead get a salad, you might get a few questions, but all you have to say is, this is what I want. You could leave it at that.
There you go. I've found the less that I explain about it, the better. I can just say it's not my thing. No, I don't feel like having dessert. It's not my thing.
Exactly, yeah.
People leave it alone. It's pretty amazing.
And what if you get the food pusher? You go to a party, oh, you've got to try this chocolate torte. I made it. You'll love it. You got to try it. No, thanks. I really don't want it. Oh, it's delicious. You really got to try it. What do you do, Glenn?
Well, I tell people that that desire stems from two underlying needs. One is the need to feel loved, and the other is the need for them to be able to eat what they want to without guilt. There are a couple of other needs which have to do with welcoming you back into the tribe. If you think about primitive times, we used to break bread in order to indicate that we weren't at war anymore.
Right.
And so towards that extent, you can come up with an alternative way for them to welcome you back into the tribe. So you can say, I'm a little full. Do you happen to have any mint tea? Or, I'm a little cold. Would you have a sweater I could borrow?
Yeah,
you need to give them something they can give you. What do you do? What do you recommend to people in those situations?
There's a couple of ways, and it really depends on how pushy the food pusher is. Generally, I'll say, no thanks, I don't want any. Sometimes they insist. I say, and I've done this for years, and so people don't usually push me too hard because when I say, no thanks, I don't want any. Or if they really insist, I'll take it and I'll set it down, not touch it.
Which is entirely possible. Yeah.
Or maybe I'll just stick my fork in it and move it around a little bit so they think I had some. And they'll ask me, was it good? And I'll say, oh, it's delicious. I'm a super honest guy. I really don't like to incorporate lying into my persona. I try to be as honest as I can with everything, both to myself and to others. Yet I'm not above lying for a good cause, such as, I'm feeling sick. If I eat anything, I think I might vomit all over the place.
Yeah, and they certainly don't want you to do that.
Right. So they say, okay, cool, fine.
Is there anything else that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you today that you want to talk about?
No, I think I've pretty much covered everything that I do and the way I work. Mostly I speak with people. I don't have a formula. I find out what's their issues and help them decide what they are willing to do, what they want to do to help steer their health towards good health rather than away from it.
Very good.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Live Fit Podcast. Please subscribe and share with someone you care about. Read show notes, articles, resources, and learn more about our weight management programs at